Next on GPS, record heat waves devastating. This summer has seen record heat waves in North America, Europe, Asia, and North Africa, leaving dozens dead in places like Canada, Korea, and Japan, which hit its highest temperature ever, 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Perhaps more alarming, meteorologically, are the heat waves being felt above the Arctic Circle this summer. The northern Norwegian town of Bardufoss hit a record high of more than 92 degrees Fahrenheit in mid-July, and was far from alone. Next door in Sweden, there were record high temperatures as well, but also raging wildfires. The Scandinavian country is said to average about 3 such fires a year. This year, it saw around 50. And then, of course, the wildfires devastating the west coast of North America as I speak, including California's largest wildfire ever. And in British Columbia, more than 460 wildfires were cited in one day. Nathaniel Rich just published an extraordinary work on climate change in the New York Times Magazine. His article, Losing Earth, the Decade We Almost Stopped Climate Change, took up the entire magazine. Elizabeth Kolbert is a staff writer at The New Yorker. She won a Pulitzer for her extraordinary work, a book called The Sixth Extinction. So Nathaniel, what does it say to you that we are still having a debate in this country as to whether or not there is in fact climate change and whether it's man-made?
Yeah, in that regard, we've really gone backwards. There's really no conversation that we have today that wasn't being had verbatim by 1980 by senior scientists in the U.S. government and all around the world, by policymakers, and people at the highest levels of the intelligence community. So it seems it has the feel of a kind of insanity.
Elizabeth, what does it mean that now the Trump administration is actively, in many ways, denying that it exists? They're actually going into the data and scrubbing it in various ways to make it seem less conclusive. I mean, what do the scientists you talk to say about all this?
I don't think it couldn't be much more dangerous when you have a global problem that we keep adding to every single day, and we're seeing very serious effects. It's surreal, really, to have people at the highest levels of the U.S. government pretending that this problem doesn't exist and pretending that we don't know the science, when really kids who go to, anyone who takes a high school class in basic earth science understands how climate change works.
Nathaniel, your terrific article, which I really commend, is at some level a little dispiriting, because it seems like you're saying we had our chance. In the 80s, there was, as you say, there wasn't any of this denialism. People did understand the problem. Republican administrations took it seriously. But ultimately, we weren't willing to pay the short-term price for the long-term gain. The problem seemed too distant, too far in the future. But now it seems as though there are some hopeful signs. There is this new green revolution. There is solar energy and wind, all very small, I understand. But do you look at, is your glass half full in any way, or did that article leave you, rewriting it, leave you particularly dispirited?
I'm on the dispirited side of the spectrum, but I'm not a total pessimist either. I think it's certainly depressing to see how close we came during that decade to a meaningful solution, or the possibility of one. And I think it's also dispiriting to see how a bunch of people who generally in that period understood the science clearly, had the same ideas about the need for a solution, still struggled to really rally support behind common sense solutions. And so that's depressing, certainly, but I also think there's an impetus to start talking about this issue in a different way, not simply as a political issue or a scientific issue, but as a human issue, which is to say a moral issue. And I think that's only just beginning to happen, but I think that's where the conversation needs to go in order to rally the kind of support that's necessary for major transformational changes in our economy.
Elizabeth, do you agree with that? Is Nathaniel right that the only way you could do that is not by just appealing to self-interest, but by appealing to a broader interest, a human, a global interest, moral interest?
I certainly think it is a moral issue. I certainly think that's a very powerful appeal. This is about literally, and I am not exaggerating. This is about the future of everyone, every human, and every other creature on planet Earth. So the moral stakes, not to mention the practical stakes, couldn't be higher. And one of the things that I often think about when I think about, why are so many people still actively trying to prevent action on climate change, and what do they think when they, look at their kids and their own grandkids and the kind of planet that they're leaving to them? And I don't know. I really would like to ask some of the big funders of climate denialism, how they look at how they face their grandkids.
I mean, what gives me some optimism is that if you look at any kind of major social issue where society has gone through a major transformation, so I think of, for instance, the civil rights era, or the recent developments in things like gay marriage, or now the way we're talking about gun violence in the U.S., the questions become reframed in a much larger and more imperative moral context. And I think it gives me some hope that that hasn't really been attempted with this issue, and it seems to me inevitable that it will, as you have younger generations coming up who are not only looking for solutions, but are demanding answers for how we've put them into the desperate position that they're in.
On that somewhat hopeful note, I'm going to have to leave it. Thank you both for a fascinating conversation.